All right, and we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're watching from. Welcome to Open Office Hours. We do this every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central, and we take the time to answer your questions about startups. Maybe it's app design, product design, maybe it's something with development you have a question about, product strategy, validating your idea, talking to customers. Whatever it may be, we're here to help you get unstuck and reach your goals. So I'll do a brief intro of myself, and then I'll hand it over to Andrew. But my name is Jacob Miller. I'm the marketing and brand manager at Headway. So I help with things like YouTube, video production, podcasting, helping writing content on the blog, or all our social stuff. So I work with our team to make all the marketing things happen at Headway. So that's enough about me. I can hand it over to Andrew.
Thanks, Jacob. I'm Andrew Verbancourt, the partner and CEO at Headway, and excited for all of you that are joining this or watching this later. Our goal, as Jacob mentioned, is we do this every week, but our goal is to help you get unstuck and kind of bring our insights from product strategy, design, and development, everything around building a new venture to you. So hopefully we can help lend you some insights, some frameworks, some things to think about that are going to help you move forward.
Awesome. Well, I think we can jump into the very first question here that I found on Reddit today. This first one is about, so they have a retail, or they're opening a retail business, looks like. So they're thinking about developing a retail app. They'll have several locations, and they want like custom tracking, VIP membership program. So I'll read the full kind of question here. So they share, I have a new retail business I'll be opening up soon, and I need to find an app developer. Does anyone have recommendations or know of a good app service that maybe could handle this? It'll involve several locations, customer tracking, VIP membership program. So my one thought is like, I'm not really sure what they're looking to build specifically and what retail service it is, but I'm also curious, are there like no code solutions, or are there platforms already that exist versus this person paying a developer to develop this custom thing where they really don't need to?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would go back to seeing what's out there. There's always a conversation for any startup or businesses. Do we build it, custom? Do we buy it? And then in each one of those, there's decision points of licensing. Do you buy something outright? Do you buy an existing, startup that failed that you could apply the tech to your business? There's a lot of different edge cases in there. So, um, yeah, not knowing specifically what your business is doing, involving several location, customer tracking, VIP membership, I'm leaning more towards more of like a loyalty program. And I know there are things out there that track membership, VIP memberships or loyal customers. So Belly Card is one of them. I'm trying to think. Bellycard.com is one. We had some friends of ours that were doing product and design over there for a long time. They were recently acquired by Mobivity, but I don't know if that it doesn't really have any impact on using it. But essentially, you're keeping every customer engaged, you're increasing growth, you're measuring how people are, how much they're coming back. A big part of what they do is that digital loyalty piece. Um, Customer visits, customer rewards, all of that fun stuff. So that might be a really good opportunity. That's the first one that comes to mind for me, rather than building your own. Obviously, the next step that's you see a lot at like local coffee shops and you see at local cafes and stuff is more of like a punch card where you don't really get that continuity with a customer where you can't push things to them, if they had an app or if they had, a newsletter, but the ability to like pair a newsletter or something with some sort of physical card to track, hey, how frequent are people buying? And those can be gamed, and there's edge cases to those, but still things I know even in Green Bay here that I'm thinking of Luna, I'm thinking of like the Exchange, some coffee shops that use those for customer loyalty. So it depends on your retail needs. Is it tracking purchase volume? Is it tracking um, repeat business? Is it just rewarding customers from loyalty, or is it like VIP membership where people are getting exclusive drops? Kind of thinking of the shoe market and some of the higher end fashion market where being a VIP member to something means you get earlier access to any key drops that land. As you think about those things. So. Um, Not a whole lot of answers, a whole lot more questions, but hopefully that kind of helps you start to think about it. I know there's one in the area here that works with a lot of um, outdoor activity companies called Retail Toolkit. They're based in Appleton, Wisconsin, and they do a lot of retail tracking for foot traffic to digital purchases, customer loyalty, how you can serve customers, revenue growth, all of those things they measure along that whole funnel. So that might be interesting depending on the angle that your retail business takes.
Awesome. Yeah, I grabbing all those links for folks as you were talking. If I missed any, be sure to throw them in there. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like too, depending on what it is specifically, I mean, there's even, I feel like Shopify can do some of this stuff as well. I don't think, it does depend on their business, like what they want to do and the type of products they're shipping out or whatever they're offering. So, um, yeah, awesome. So I think we can head to the next question.
Yeah, I was just thinking too, like what other point of sale systems might have this, like Square. They're
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
customer oriented. They might have a retail campaign where they measure loyalty. I know they do. Like I've definitely checked out on Square apps before where it's like, hey, this is your fourth visit or something like that.
Hmm.
So it really depends on what the goals of your membership program is. Is it to increase retention? Is it just to
Hmm.
have a log of customers where you have their information one way or another?
Yeah. Hmm. Interesting. All right. Let's jump over to this next one. So this one's kind of interesting. So how to choose, test, and validate a revenue model. So they asked, basically it's between subscription and ad funding. I'm building now and I want to build with one or the other in mind. So how do I know which revenue model is better? What questions do I ask and whom do I ask them to? If this was a product or a marketing, it would be simple to do A/B testing for user feedback. But how do you A/B test a revenue model? And they just kind of like apologize, like hopefully this isn't a stupid question, but they are just very curious about this.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a good question. I don't, as with anything, mileage may vary and like there's different answers because there's just different approaches. But from um, I think it goes back to understanding like how the models work out for your users. So if you're going subscription model, you have customer acquisition costs that play into the equation. You have the lifetime value that plays into the equation of that. Where essentially a good industry benchmark there is CAC to LTV ratio, which is like 3 to 5. So meaning it costs you 33% of a total lifetime value to acquire a customer, meaning, hey, you're paying $3.33 to acquire a customer that's worth $10. That's a good proposition for you as an owner. And that's kind of like a benchmark, knowing that, hey, you're probably entering into muddier water, meaning your message is maybe not as targeted as it could be. And the industry also uses 5 as a benchmark where you're spending $2 to make 10. And so you have a ratio of 5. And so that gives you a good idea of like how much does it cost you to acquire customers? Are you looking for them in the right places? Is your message targeted enough? Is your value prop targeted enough to really guide between those two guide rails? When you look at ad funding, the thing to keep in mind is like trying to get in the mind of buyers, of people who are buying ads, and what the mechanisms are for that. So one that we talk about frequently is cost per million or cost per thousand impressions. And that's, on YouTube, there's different industries. People are willing to pay, different amounts for it. If you're talking about finance on YouTube, you're going to get paid a lot more than you're talking about, the best paper kits to build, with your kids. You're just going to get different people because of the lifetime value metrics that they have are different, right? And so digging into ad funding and understanding, hey, if you're going to charge cost per million, what's an industry average? And if you're offering a niche product, are you able to charge more because of that? Because it is like a very refined target versus doing Google AdWords and trying to have someone target down. If your product only did one thing very specific, is it more valuable to, will essentially sponsors get more out of it if you had your own ad network that you monitored? So doing the numbers there is really important. So if you can get to a cost per million or cost per thousand impressions, that'll help you understand, hey, what do I have to get to in terms of users, in terms of visits, in terms of impressions, to be able to have a sustainable business? And then kind of do the counter with subscriptions. Like, where's break even for you in your operations, and trying to balance those two together. The ad fund route also will do things for your product team that will incentivize keeping people on site for better or worse, right? And so we see this a lot with social networks where they're supported by ads, where there's a lot of gamification and behavioral design at play, where they're trying to get your eyeballs to do more. You're trying to get your mouse to click on more things and to stay on platform. And so that kind of goes against humane design principles and like getting people to an outcome and letting them go on their way. So there are things that you start to incentivize either one of those. Um, I personally would lean more towards a subscription model because that kind of frees you from the selling of data and selling of people's data. And there's new networks out there now where um, BitClout just launched, which is like a blockchain-based social network that like you trade your own coins and data on. I'm not exactly sure of all the ins and outs quite yet. Since it just launched, but the ad funding is definitely going to be a longer route, for you to get even 1,000 impressions at first if you only have, let's say, 10 users. You're going to get 1,000 impressions over the course of a month, maybe, and that actual value that actual amount that somebody would pay you for that is going to be very minimal, $1, $2, $3, depending. So once you dig into into industry standards um, for what somebody's media buying, for like what price are they paying, you can start to extrapolate, hey, which is better. The other thing I will say, like as you're validating a revenue model, is it's much harder to learn for ad funding because you don't really know till later. So you are trying to bank on keeping people in the app, keeping them engaged versus solving a valuable problem. And it can be both, but in our experience, like it's easier for us to understand the potential of an idea and not necessarily invalidate it by selling early subscriptions to something rather than trying to go free and then switch the paid model later.
Awesome. All right. I don't have any questions here on YouTube yet, but I think we can jump to this next one. I think this next one is probably runs through everyone's head, if they're an entrepreneur or a potential founder. Should I join an incubator? So here's what they have to say. To put it shortly, I'm having a first call next weekend with my school's incubator. From what I heard, as my partners and I are students of the school, we might get a free entry if our project is interesting enough. In my mind, we have our chances. We're working on a state-of-the-art machine learning project, and we already have an MVP. We still have some questions about incubators in general. What should I expect? Is it really useful? How to get the most out of it? And are there some things I should be aware of? And if you have some experience with this kind of structure, be glad to have your feedback about it. Thanks in advance.
Yeah, so pretty varied question. I think incubators vary from schools, if your university's putting it on versus somebody that's external putting on an incubator. I think the main benefits of it really are the network that comes with it, the access to the people, the mentors that are part of it. So I think like when you look at incubators or even accelerators, looking for people that align with what you're doing and who your customers might be, can they introduce you to your first 5 customers, or can they introduce you to talent that you don't have access to that can join your team? So I think you know what you can expect is a little bit different. I think I've seen incubators labeled as accelerators and vice versa, and using them interchangeably, even though they can be a little bit different. And so, you get the most out of it by being engaged. I think it's easy to join a program like that, or even, as we think about like the on deck fellowship, you get out what you put in. So if you put in like a lot of time and you take kind of their teaching and you take it to the next level and you figure out how to implement it, you're going to get a lot more out of it than kind of like, and Scott, who we work with on Sales Coach, says this a lot, like to know and not do is to not really know. And I think he quotes the Kung Fu Panda on that. But essentially, if you know something and you don't put it into an action, you don't really know it, right? It's kind of, you're missing the mark there. So making sure that you're applying what you're getting from the incubator, and I think really using it as a tool to network and to get access to people you otherwise wouldn't. And I think a lot of folks, whether that's vendors, partners, people who have access to capital, that's a big allure of it, is like trying to expand your network. And then when you're ready to do a fundraise, if you are going to do one, you have access to their network to be able to pitch to them and to be able to really have warm intros to folks of like, oh, I was part of this incubator, which might have a certain clout to it. If you mention it in conversations where they know you've gone through a specific set of programming, they know you're thinking about the business model from more than just a feature standpoint. So I think that can be helpful. And again, will depend. Some of them are paid, some of them are percentage of equity. Don't know too many details around yours specifically, but I would say if you see an opportunity that aligns with your business, your customers, and potentially funding your venture, I think that can be a good bet. Oh, you're muted, Jacob.
Of
Sorry.
course I am. So awesome. So if anyone's tuning in here on YouTube and you have a question, be sure to ask us here in the chat. But in the meantime, we have one more question we'll answer from Reddit, um, just to kind of keep things moving along here and helping people out. All right. So this one, it's funny that you mentioned Scott before. So this one is any advice for someone new to startup sales? So they share, what should my priorities be for the first 6 weeks at a B2B SaaS startup if my objective is to sign 10 new clients and get them to use the platform? What should I be doing on a daily basis? I'm new to sales and I want to approach it efficiently instead of being all over the place. And I'm okay with cold calling if need be, just to know where to start.
Yeah, I think the big thing, that we've learned from Scott and Scott at Sales Qualia, we work with him, and he works with a lot of B2B SaaS startups as well. But his big thing is go slow to go fast, or slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So being able to really dig into the problem that you're solving, the problem that your customers have, and aligning those two together to make sure you're finding the right fit, and setting expectations early on in the sale, I think is most important. I think, a lot of people in sales will get somebody who's maybe ready to buy, and then you go to present a proposal or present, what the engagement looks like, and they're not yet ready to buy because you haven't laid out the business case, right? And so they have to sell internally. You haven't had all those discussions to go slow through that. Um, but I think, before you get into, and I think Scott and his team would say the same thing, before you get into automating outbound and really like list building and trying to automate and say, we're sending out 1,000 emails a day and we're just going to catch whatever, doing it manually is definitely going to be the best way, that more personalized outreach. Um, so I'm trying to think of how to peel this back a little bit. So like identifying your ideal customer profile, your ICP is going to be super helpful. Identifying who, how are they solving it now? What are the alternatives? Who's your competition? Is your competition doing nothing? Is your competition another SaaS app that's out there? Is it something internal? And then really starting to build up a business case for why you're the best solution to that problem. And a big part of sales is like believing that you actually have something really valuable to offer and that you can solve their problem, and you can educate on that. The next part in B2B SaaS, and I would definitely, as a caveat, like dig into Scott's book. He has it online. I think it might be on his website as well. But it's how to do, you know, how to sell for your startup when you really, really have to and don't know how. And he does a really good job of peeling like back this whole process. But essentially being able to, identify your client, the problems you're solving, the value that you provide, how your solution aligns with that, and then understand more of where customers are trying to go and what success looks like for them. How would they measure success of this? Defining out the criteria for a pilot or for success. And then where we see a lot of startups kind of go bad is when they're selling to an enterprise and they just do a free trial. Well, what usually happens with a free trial or a free pilot is that they're not really engaged. They don't really provide feedback. It doesn't get fully integrated into the business. And so there's no buy-in, right? You kind of say, hey, here this is, and the company never really gets to it because it's not a priority. So would it also encourage you to, in signing those new clients, whether it's a pilot or not, having them actually be paid pilots, even if it is, some sort of discount. On a daily basis, I think, peeling back your 10 new clients, like trying to understand what does it actually take to get one client on the phone? And when you get that client on the phone, what's your conversion rate? And that'll help you understand like how many new leads do you have to book, right? Are you doing all outbound for this? Are there inbound things that you could do? And we talk about it kind of in two different ways here. When we think about reaching our customers is like, hey, can we put bait out, right? Can we go fishing for them and know kind of what they enjoy and what's going to add value, or can we go find them using a list or using network events or conferences or things like that as a proxy to try and align with our customers. So finding where they are once you have your ICP is important, and then um, yeah, I think just making sure you have a business case that aligns, and the best selling is teaching and educating. And so coming with a perspective of how your platform, helps change the paradigm or helps alleviate the pains and gains that they have, I think is super important. So a little bit less of sales and more of just aligning your business and product strategy with the message that you're presenting, which they're also intertwined. So um, I don't know if that's helpful. I know Scott has some sort of assessment on his site as well. If you wanna head over there. Um, yeah, I think the other thing is like it's hard to think about how do we get to 10 new clients. So a lot of Scott's advice is, can we get to one? Like, what does it take to sign one, and then let's do two, and then let's get to five, right? And so how do you just focus on getting your first one and then repeating that versus saying, well, we need 10, in the next 6 weeks. How do we get there?
Yeah, awesome. All right. All right. Hello, Ten. Thanks for joining us. Good to have you on YouTube. If you have any questions for us today, be sure to share them in the chat there, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. Otherwise, I think we can move on to another question I found on Reddit, that I think a lot of people ask about and are, especially as they launch their software. So it's about B2B SaaS behavioral data tracking. They ask, we're a small startup and we're looking to install behavior tracking to our application. This will allow us to gain insight into usage, sticking points, what devices they're on, etc. It's been a long time since I've had to make a decision about this. I've used Kissmetrics and Full Story in the past 5+ years ago. I didn't care for Kissmetrics, and Full Story is now crazy expensive. A lot of these applications are built for e-commerce or website tracking, and I'm looking for a more focused one that's more focused on SaaS application than marketing funnels. So they are asking, does anyone have a good one to recommend that won't cost an arm and a leg?
Yeah, I think the way that they're priced is based on the value that they provide. This, which is why I think a lot of these tools are starting to become more inflated. But the one we recommend a lot, which actually has a startup plan, so you can apply for the startup plan, which gives you 1 year of essentially all of their tools, with the exception of a couple very premium tools for intercom. So we'll often suggest that. But if you're going to be doing a lot of analytics and a lot of funnel metrics, we'll usually recommend integrating with Segment. um, I think it's segment.io. Yeah, now segment.com. So integrating with Segment will help you integrate and send data to Google Analytics, to Full Story, to Intercom, all of those things, which I think is super valuable. But you can swap out where you're sending the data, and you just focus on tracking the events with Segment's codes, which is super helpful. It is a bit pricier. I think it starts at 100 or 150 a month. So depends on how you want to balance that with your development costs. Obviously, if you're integrating with more than one tool, Segment's going to save you money, in the first year for sure, just based on time saved. So, understanding whether or not that's the right fit for you. But a lot of times we will recommend Intercom. We'll also recommend things like Amplitude. We'll recommend one that we started using for mobile is called UXCam. And that's for mobile analytics and be able to show you screen flows and session events and replays and issues and things that come up. Um, so as far as ones that don't cost an arm and a leg, it depends. I think Intercom's startup tier is $49 a month for the first year if you're on their tier, and then obviously things that escalate from there after the first year. The costs go to, depending on the tools you're using, anywhere from $100 to $400 a month. So it can be quite expensive. But as you're visualizing the funnels, it's super important for you to be able to understand that. The other thing I would add about Intercom is it allows you to do the notifications and nudges based on events. So, or based on not their events, their attributes. So you assign attributes to a user. Let's say a good example would be someone checking out on your website, and they checked out. I guess Shopify has that capability. I'm trying to think of a better example. One of the examples is, let's say you were doing an app that helped you declutter your home, which is an app that we've created, but an app that helped you declutter your home, and you wanted someone to sign up and go through onboarding. In order to declutter your home, you had to define out what your home was and define out the rooms in your house. And so you could track all those attributes about that user and what they had set up in the counts through Intercom, and say, hey, if somebody set up their home but didn't set up all their rooms and they haven't been in the app in 2 days, let's send them a message and remind them, hey, it looks like you set up your home. Next step is setting up your rooms. Let us know if you have any questions. Here's a wiki on this if there's any instructions or anything you want to add. It allows you to send contextual messages based on where they are at in the funnel and based on their activity, which is super helpful. So that's why I would usually lean towards that, or something that helps you to send messages based on events and user activity in the app. And I can't see. I was trying to look up um, what Full Story's pricing was today, and I can't see that just because they've hidden it now. It's now behind the curtain.
So yeah, sometimes you can find those sites that have the pricing. I think it's like Capterra.com or something. They do like pricing breakdowns of different tools and stuff. Let me see. I can't find a quick answer. Yeah, it says to contact them for details. So they've switched their model
Yeah,
probably.
I
Probably
think
because
they've.
like I think with when it comes to like higher cost tools, like a lot of companies find that manual onboarding with a specialist is better because it's better with retention. Because a lot of times people will buy a tool and they don't know how to set it up properly, and then they stop using it, so they stop paying. So a lot of it's like getting people set up for success. Otherwise, like so they understand the value of it. Um, but yeah, awesome. Well, we actually have a comment from 10 on YouTube here. I don't know if he'll be able to answer this or not, Andrew, but he shares, I'm recently starting to learn Elixir and loved it, doing some pet projects. Do you think Elixir is the go-to language for all sorts of projects?
We have some Elixir evangelists on our team, so I'm sure I'm sure they would recommend it. We started using it here on like our first production apps on some logistics and supply chain work and on some fintech stuff where we're doing high volume, high throughput. Obviously, like the reliability of it is a big key feature in like just the concurrency. We also started to use it as a backend for some of our mobile apps as well. So I think it really depends on the kind of the mix of your team and where your skill sets are depending on what it looks like. But we've started to lean on it more for all sorts of projects. And I know Elixir Live View has started to become a replacement for some of the React apps that we're writing, which also decreases some of the complexity of the code bundled together. So like Birdseye, as an example, which is an internal project that we've been working on, is written in Elixir with Live View on the front end, and we swapped out React's front end with Live View. So started to lean into it for more applications that maybe aren't your normal go-to. Tim also has a good, trying to find it here, also has a good introduction to Elixir and kind of some use cases and when to lean on it on our YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'll link that here, Elixir Lang Pros and Cons. And there might be some gems in there of kind of the advantages and the process and behavior and things like that that'll be good for you to lean on. But I would encourage you, if you have a specific use case or some questions, to just email us at ahoy@headway.io. And I can put that up as a banner quick. And we can make sure that Tim or John from our team, or maybe someone else from our team, can get
Mm-hmm.
back to you on any of those things. But to answer more, I guess, subjectively, we've started to lean on it for more than maybe what we initially thought. It's been more of our go-to across different projects, both mobile backends plus full stack web.
Yeah, and next week too, it's not necessarily specific to Elixir, but we'll be having an event with the development team next week, and they're going to be talking about code quality, efficiency, speed. So how can you code, fast, but without sacrificing quality, and all that kind of stuff. So they'll be talking about the processes, tools, and automations that we have set up on our teams to write better code faster. So Tim will actually be part of that discussion. So he'll be able to share. So Ten, if you want to hop back in next week, it's on April 8th. And join. You can definitely ask Tim anything about Elixir in the Q&A. I'm sure he'll answer his thoughts, and also share the things that he's been learning there, which is cool. So actually, I'll just share. I can share a link to that for you. All right, cool. Well, if anyone on YouTube is watching and has a question, be sure to ask. Otherwise, I think we might wrap it up early today. We actually have someone new joining the team, so we'll be having lunch with them soon. We're super excited to have him. We'll be announcing who that is soon on social and in the manifest this week. Oh, good, awesome, good to hear, Ten. You wanted to know whether it can replace React or not.
Yeah,
Awesome, yeah. I would join next week, Ten, and just ask the development crew, and see what their thoughts are. It's definitely not. I'm not a developer, and neither is Andrew. Andrew definitely can do a little bit of code, but we're definitely not the experts on Elixir. So
yeah, and
yeah.
I think 10 was wondering too if I mentioned with Bird's Eye we replaced React with Live View, Phoenix Live View, which is part of Elixir. So hopefully that was good. But yeah, definitely join next week and ask away.
Yeah, awesome. Well, cool. So I think I'm going to share. I'm actually going to just talk about events we have coming. We have some pretty cool things coming up here for events this month in April. Just going to share my screen. There we go. Awesome. So if you head to headway.io and go to our events page, we got a list of some upcoming events. So as we mentioned before, we have an event with the development team. They'll be talking about better code faster. So the tools, processes, and automation you can use to improve the way you work as a developer. So it'll be Tim, Kelsey, Chris, and Maria from our development team. So super excited to have you join us for that. We also have John Zaraski, the author of the Sprint book, and Make Time. So his background was in Google Ventures. He's worked in a lot of other startups as well. A lot of consulting to a lot of large organizations about the design sprint process. And now he's back in Wisconsin, which is where our main location is. And so we're super excited to have him talk with Ryan and Robert from the product strategy team about what he's been kind of up to lately, and just some deep dives into the design sprint process. And then later in April, we also have Clint from our design team talking about design team alignment through storytelling, and how you can kind of get everyone on the same page throughout a project. Actually, I'll kind of click in that a little bit more just to elaborate. So learn how to capture the story of your target audience and the ways it can serve as a guide throughout your project's life cycle. So go ahead and head to headway.io/events, and you can take a deeper dive into all these events that we have here, and also if you're on that page, we have all of our past event recordings. They're also on our YouTube channel, but feel free to dive into this library here. We have a bunch of different things for design development, but it's a great way to kind of go through it in a very managed, categorized way. So awesome. So I think that's it for upcoming events. I don't think there's any more questions on YouTube, so I think we can wrap it up. Andrew, is there anything else that you want to share?
No, nothing. Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Again, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, depending on when you're watching this. And we'll see you next week.